Cracking, everybody? Welcome back for a new video. Today we're back on Soft White Underbelly. I was told to check out this interview. It says ex-gang member interview Johnny. So let's see what Johnny's got to talk about.
Hey, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley on the border of
I was born in the San Gabriel Valley. We're starting off good.
East LA, Monterey Park, Alhambra area,
Which is a predominantly,
Asian community.
even the street signs are in Chinese there.
Exactly. So I had both my parents. My father was, I would say my childhood was kind of like miserable, filled with distrust. My father was a drunk, alcoholic. My mom was Taoist Buddhist, so it was kind of ran like a dictatorship. And we were really young, and my dad would actually beat us, me and my brother and my mom. I sent my mom to the ICU a lot of times, bunch of times. So it was very, very chaotic as a kid.
So the person that told me I should check this video out said that there's a lot of similarities between myself and Johnny. So I too grew up in a very violent home. Saw my mom get sent to the hospital. I was beaten almost every day. But I was beaten by both parents. Let's see what he has to say though.
And I think, grew up around that type of environment where there was gangs, drugs, violence. We were low income, not stereotypical Asian, but we didn't really have much money. We grew up around a lot of Hispanics. There was a lot of culture shock as well. Our parents are immigrants, so they didn't really, know how to fit in. So we kind of had to learn everything from the streets. When I was young, I had a very peculiar mindset. I trusted in myself a lot because I felt like I couldn't trust my parents.
That's how I was. From a very young age, I believed that I was on my own, that I couldn't depend on anyone, and that no one had my best interests at heart. And so my hatred for all authority figures ran very deep in me. And these are the things that led me to do the things that I would do later, and be the kind of person that I was, because I had to look out for me. But I want to hear more of this.
Time, I was 10 years old and I got jumped for the first time. Had my backpack stolen, had my shoes taken. I went home and my father asked me, "Where is your backpack? Where's your stuff?" And I said, I got jumped by 4 Hispanics, and he didn't believe me. He thought that I threw away my backpack. He thought that I wasn't trying to do good in school. So he beat me after that.
So I'll say this, had that have happened to me, my dad wouldn't have beat me up, because I remember I fought these dudes. They were brothers. And I got jumped by them when I was a little kid. And because I was beating the one up that was my age, so the older one jumped in. And when I was a kid, I had so much anger in me. Like, even my cousins knew if I started crying, I was going to go nuts. Like, it was a thing. Like, I would start crying because I was so mad, and then I would black out and just get off, right? And so I went home and I was crying. And I remember I tried to go in the house, and my mom was like, "The hell you crying for?" And I was like, "Well, I got in a fight, and I had to fight the 2 brothers, this and that." She was like, "Sit on the porch till your dad gets home." And my dad came home, and he was like, "What's up, mijo?" And my mom was like, "Hey, well, your son tried to come in the house crying." And he goes, "What happened?" So I ran him down, right? And my dad goes, "Hey, can we walk or do we have to drive?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "How far do they live? Can we walk or do we got to drive?" So I said, "No, we could walk." So he goes, "Let's walk." And it was around the corner. And then I told him, "It's that house right there." And he goes, "Okay." He goes, "This is what you're going to do." He goes, "Go knock on the door. And when they answer, just punch him in the face. That's what I want." And so when I knocked, the mom answered. And everybody knew who my dad was. So she saw my dad, was like, "Oh, shit." And I asked for the one that was my age. And she closed the door, and then he came and he opened the door, and I socked him in the face. Boom, like my dad told me. And then my dad was calling the dad out. Like, "Come on out here. Like, my son will beat up both of your sons one-on-one, and then I'm going to whoop you." So that was the difference. Was my dad was more like, nah, 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 nah. We gonna go fight that whole family. You ain't coming home crying, and yeah, I wouldn't have got beat for that. But I would have got beat if I wouldn't have went over there and fought.
So yeah, I kind of went through a lot with the beatings and a lot of trauma. And so at the age of 12 years old, I actually joined a gang. I joined the Watchings, the Chinese triad type of gang out in that area. Very big gang.
So these are Asian gangs.
Yes, a lot of Asian gangs out there. We're very incognito, hush hush, tight lip, but they do exist. And so I joined that at 12 years old. And a lot of people ask me, why would you join that? Why would you join a gang, at the age of 12? And a lot of people will say it's probably due to, their broken home or a broken family or drugs or violence, just the environment. For me, particularly, in my opinion, I noticed that it stemmed from trusting and believing myself. When I was young, I thought that if I did everything I wanted to do, I would be happy. So
Mine was different. Mine was, I chose that as my family because the family that I had, I felt didn't love me, didn't trust me. I was powerless in my own family, in my own home. And I would see that gang members, people feared them, people respected them. They didn't give a damn about the cops. They made their own rules. To me, that was strength and that was love and that was what I needed. I felt like if I'm that, I'm somebody in life, because I was nobody in my own home, let alone anywhere else. So, and that's why once I got into neighborhood shit, gang banging, I wasn't okay with just being like the regular dude. I had to do more and be more. And that was because of the insecurities that I had from being in that home and knowing everybody knew that type of household I was living in, the violence, everything that was going on, and nobody cared. So it was me against the world. But once I got into the neighborhood, I was like, yeah, now I got a crew. But even then, the insecurities eat at you, and I could be surrounded with 40 homies, 50 homies, 100 homies, and feel completely alone. It was weird.
having fun, going out with gang members, stuff like that, I thought was really fun. And the things that I didn't want to do, such as, exercising, studying, doing homework, I didn't do because I thought if I did everything I wanted to do, I would be happy. And the things that I didn't want to do, I didn't do because I didn't think it would make me happy. So I looked at the gang life and it started at the core of my heart. I really wanted to be a gang member. I looked up to those people. And so I joined that type of lifestyle. 3 months into it, at the age of 12, I caught my first case. And that was originally a kidnapping / robbery, but they dropped the charges down.
At 12 years old.
At 12, yeah. And ended up, it was with a group of people, of course, but ended up catching the charge for dissuading a witness for the benefit of a gang. So ended up going to YA, California Youth Authority. I was at SRCC first, and then caught a couple fights in there, got written up. They call it level Bs, and then ended up going to Fred C. Nellis YA. And I was 12 years old. They gave me 4 years. And when I was in YA, I learned a lot of, it cultivated the mindset to believe in myself even more. I really trusted myself because I had seen rapes, I had seen murders, I had seen stabbings, fightings. I learned how to fight there. They call it gladiator school for a reason. You fight a lot.
You see, this is the thing. He's saying the things that I've said a bunch of times about the youth authority. He saw people get raped. YA is the only place where I saw people get turned out. And it was the most brutal place where I saw people preying on people mentally as well as physically, constantly. And that's why I say when people came out of there, while they were in there, they developed a psychology, a way of looking at people, reading people, looking at the world that was so antisocial that it's crazy.
And I learned the 2-second takeoff rule, meaning if you feel disrespected within 2 seconds, you have to handle it, whether it's stabbing them, fighting them, beating them up. Otherwise, you'll be labeled a punk, excuse my language, a bitch, a leva, stuff like that. So I did 4 years there, and it was really, really traumatic. And I get out, you know, 67 days, 2 months and a week. I catch my second case. This time I'm an adult. They try me as an adult. It's 2 counts of assault with deadly weapon. Again, it was supposed to be a robbery and attempted, but they dropped the charge down. I pled out. They gave me 10 years, 85%, so 8 and some change. So yeah, I get to prison and it's a whole nother ball game. It's first off, I'm Chinese, so being there, we were outnumbered. It really was a racial thing, whereas in YA, it was more of gangbanging. It was a little bit of race, but you had to represent your colors, represent your flag, represent your people. But when you go to prison, you have to drop your flag, you have to drop everything, and you have to represent the other car or the race, right? So in there, I had to calm down because I was a YA baby. I didn't know how to program. After about a year, I learned how to program the rules, the regulations, and everything, and I was able to really start to kind of function in prison. I went through a lot of depression, so I had seen some counselors in there. I'm just being honest. Like, I was able to get my GED. I was able to get anger management, counseling, and everything looked on the up. But there was one thing that I really couldn't get rid of, and it was this emptiness and this void I had felt inside of my heart.
That's what I was talking about. I'm interested. I want to see what he says, because obviously this guy has developed insight into himself and what makes him tick. So I'm sure he's going to explain it. But it was like I was just saying, it didn't matter how many people were around me, who I was with. I always felt I was on my own. And that came from my childhood, and that was something that I had to figure out, But it is interesting to hear this guy talk, and I'm glad that this video was referred to me. So let's see what else he has to say. I'm not going to do the whole video. It's a long video, and I don't want to keep you guys here that long, but we'll go a little bit longer. And if you guys want, we'll do a part 2.
No matter what I did, I really couldn't overcome this emptiness and this void. And it didn't matter what I did. I just always felt this sadness and feeling inadequate as a human being. And so, some of the older homies.
I want to. So, I'm sure there was that feeling of inadequacy somewhere hidden. But I think, like, I had made it the point that, when I was a kid and I was scared, in the house and stuff of being beaten, that once I built that wall around myself, I was very arrogant. I was very ego driven. I was self-centered. So I didn't feel that, but I know it was in there somewhere, but it was buried. I was hiding that, from the world and from myself. So I was a little of the opposite of what he was saying there.
The people in there, the people who kind of like represent us, we usually look to them for advice. So one of the older guys, some old Chinese dude, he's like, bro, you should start reading, and working out and kind of get your mind off of things, because he noticed that I was kind of like an overthinker. And so I started reading. I read the Quran in there front to back 3 times, read the Bible in there front to back 2 times. And, it didn't really do anything for me, honestly. So I get out after doing my stretch. I parole out of CRC Norco, and I meet my mom, and she didn't really visit me much. She's an older lady. She didn't know how to navigate the correctional facilities and stuff like that, so she didn't really visit me. But I noticed a difference in my mom. She had this inner peace about her that I really didn't understand, because, mind you, she has not just me but my brother, 2 kids in prison who were incarcerated. My brother did also 12 years, and she was still married to my father, her husband, who was still an abusive, alcoholic person. She still lived in Section 8. She still had, all that trauma and stuff like that. But she had no circumstances to be happy, but I realized that she was happier than I was, And so I asked my mom, why are you so happy? What changed? And then she mentioned church. And at that time, honestly, it's like I rolled up the windows in the car. I was like, I'm not trying to hear about that, Mom. I don't believe in God. We were raised Buddhist. I'm good. So she said, fair enough. You know, she didn't push, she didn't say anything. She just let me be. So as I got out, I had that heart that I wanted to still do better and do good. You know, I had lived my whole life doing bad things and following myself, trusting myself. So I wanted to get a job. I wanted to help my parents out, you know, and I tried to look for a job, but as a 2-strike felon with a violent crime, yeah, it wasn't happening. I applied for even like McDonald's, FedEx, UPS, all the places that they say they hire convicted felons.
I don't know why that's always strange to me when I hear people say that, because for an example, he did a stretch. Unless you're gonna work for a place that does government work, they're only gonna do the state background check. That only goes back 7 years. So those of you that are getting out of prison now, I don't know if you still have to check. You know, they had to check the box or reject the box, whatever that thing was. If you did more than 7 years and you apply for somewhere, say you haven't been incarcerated, you haven't been convicted of a felony, because you have not been convicted of a felony in the last 7 years. Me, with a murder charge, I've never had a problem getting employed or being employed, and I always mark that I don't have a felony. So I think that may be a problem, is he was filling it out honestly, and it was honestly wrecking him.
And I wasn't showing any love, honestly. But immediately I went back to the streets. You know, I started to sell drugs again. And at that time, you know, I was still on parole. So it was very risky looking over my shoulder. And I just felt like this was not something I could make a career out of. And so, you know, I devised this plan to actually rob a drug dealer, you know, because my thinking at the time was, if I'm selling all these drugs, it's risky. But if I just rob someone who sells all the drugs, then I would inherit and gain a lot of money. So it was me and a friend of mine. He was like my road.
And you would gain a big enemy.
Dog. And I told him, hey, bro, let's rob this dude. He's a well-known drug dealer in our area. Anyway, you know, I told him I was going to go to the right of the car. He was going to go to the left of the car. And, you know, when I stepped to go to the right of the car, my friend stepped in front of me. So naturally, I went to the left of the car. As I'm walking up on the driver's side of the car, I hear 3 gunshots, you know. And when it rang out, I actually assumed initially that it was my friend who shot the dude. You know, I was like, damn, you didn't even give him a chance. Well, whatever, you know, it is what it is. We'll roll with the punches. We're very cold like that. But actually, the car sped off, and I realized it was my friend that had gotten shot. And, you know, he was just laying there. I remember vividly, like, the sounds, the noise that he was making, and he was dying. And there I'm holding him, and he died in my arms, you know. And yes, every time I think about that, I get a little emotional. But, you know, that moment was very pivotal in my life, because
I just thought of it. You know, I was thinking, wow, yeah, you know, he's got to have a lot of guilt because it was his lick. He came up with the lick, but then I snapped. It took me a second to realize he was supposed to die. He told his homeboy, you go that way, I'll go this way. And his homeboy cut in front of him, and he caught the bullets that this dude would have caught. So I'm sure that's something he's never going to forgive himself for.
Thought about it, like, that was supposed to be me. Actually, if I went to the right of the car, I probably wouldn't be here today. Mm-hmm. So, you know, as I seen that, I started to really think in my life, like, I could feel death around the corner. You know, it didn't matter what I would do. I felt like I was on borrowed time. I felt like I was gonna die soon. And 3 days after that, I had received a letter from one of my friends, just a childhood friend. He grew up with us in the projects in Section 8. He gave me a letter that was really eerie. You know, he's like, you know, think about me when I'm gone, and just saying these types of things. And 3 days after that, I find out that he had committed suicide in jail. So there was death all around me, and I was feeling that, you know, it was creeping up on me. And, you know, miraculously, my mom actually, a couple of days after these incidents had happened, her car had broken down. And she was like, hey, Johnny, like, I need you to take me to church. You know, she's a translator. She was very, like, involved at the time. And so I said, yeah, there's no harm in that. You know, I want to help mom out. You know, I'd spent all my life, you know, being bad to her, so I wanted to treat her well. So I took her to the church. But I told her very specifically, I don't want to be evangelized. I don't want to talk to the pastor. And so when I get there, I remember this pastor runs out and he's like, "Hey, Johnny, good to see you. And why don't you come on in for some food, And they had made like some black bean noodles. And that's actually my favorite dish. I love eating black bean noodles. For those Asian Sundong people out there who know what I'm talking about, it's like a delicacy for us. I grew up eating that stuff. So I was like, what's the harm in eating? But I told the pastor, I don't want to hear about it.
All right. We're already 12 minutes, 18 seconds in. With my talking, it's probably over 20 minutes. I think I see. I'm gonna write it down where we're at. And if you guys want a part 2, we'll do a part 2. I think we know what's about to happen. His mom's car didn't break down on its own. There was some things going on in his life that needed to happen, and they did, and got him to where he's at. His favorite food. We know where it's going. And you can tell with the humility that he has that obviously he's probably with the Lord. He's walking with the Lord, and that's a good thing, man. This is somebody. This is just another example of the change that can happen. When people think these people that they're thugs and they're worthless. They are not productive to society. This is an example. He didn't have to catch life to figure it out. He just went within himself to figure out what was wrong with some outside help. But anyways, that's the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Please stay safe, stay smart, and tell the ones you love that you love them, right? I'm out.